Good morning. We are going to talk about how to calculate the population covariance today in the CALC 84. And I tried this time to maybe be a little bit more uh, explicit in showing the formula and the data and so forth. Hopefully that'll help you follow along a little bit better what's going on. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the calculator-friendly version of the formula for population covariance, and that is that the covariance between two variables x and y is 1 over n, where n is your sample size of your paired data, times the sum of each one of the x and the y values. I did not put the subscripts in there for that, but that should be fairly straightforward to understand, minus the product of the mean of the x values and the mean of the y values. Now, on your calculator, you will not find a mu for that purpose. Typically, the TI-84 or CALC 84 expresses a mean, whether it be population or sample, as x bar. But on the CALC 84, it will just say in words mean x. Okay, so what we're going to do first is enter our data into the calculator, and I'll come back to this window so that you can enter the data in just 1 second. But I do want to first remind people how to get to the place where you enter the data. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to your calculator, whether it be a CALC 84 or a TI 84, hit the Stat button. Under Stat, choose Edit, and then under the Edit menu, choose Edit, and then you just enter each one of the values one at a time. Just as a refresher for the difference between the CALC 84 and the TI 84, if you need to clear a list, which I certainly do not want to do here because I've already entered the information. Okay, so listen really carefully to this. You put your cursor directly on your list name, in this case L1. If I wanted to delete it, on the CALC 84, I would hit the delete button. Do not do that on the TI 84. That literally just gets rid of the list. It can be brought back quite easily. But on the TI 84, instead you hit the clear button. Okay, so there is that distinction. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the list. Once you start entering the data, you just type in a data value, hit enter, type in another value, hit enter, and then when you're down at the bottom and you want to come over to L2, just hit the right arrow button on your calculator. Okay, back to the data. So here's your data. I think you should be able to see all of it. I will make it be a little more full screen. That'll help a little bit. So go ahead and hit the pause button on your video. Take the time to enter the data in so that you can actually follow along. And then once you're done, come back, and then the next thing that we'll do is proceed through how we will use the CALC 84 or TI 84 to calculate the population covariance. Okay, it's my assumption that you have now entered your data in, and I wanted to come back to actually being in the list mode because I wanted to point out the fact that before we do the next step, you need to get out of the list mode. And to do that, if you hit the second button and then the button to its right, it will quit you out of that and take you back to what we call the home screen. I have mine cleared. It doesn't technically need to be cleared, but it'll make it a little easier to see what's going on. Now we need to have the calculator, and this is a step that very often gets skipped, and then people wonder why the calculator won't do the work. What your calculator needs to do now is calculate some values and store them in its memory. And the values that it needs are the ones from that formula. Let's go back to it real quick. So what it needs is it needs to calculate the mean of the x values, the mean of the y values. It needs to know how many data points there are, in other words, n. And then it also needs the sum of the x times the y values. And it will calculate all of that in two variable stats. So hit your stat button, choose calculate, And then what we're going to do is, and I know it looks different if you're on the TI-84. On the CALC 84, it's just two, well, it's this also on the TI-84, but we're going to use two variable stats. And I think the default is for L1 and L2, but I always just take the time to go ahead and make sure I've entered in the lists that I want to have in there. So to enter L1, I hit second and the 1 button. And then the second list, this is called bivariate data, 2 sets of data. The data that is matched with is in L2, so second 2. Close your parentheses. That's probably not necessary either. And hit enter. Okay. Now, I'm just going to look at my data here and let you take a look at it. And let's see what all these different values are that we need. We're going to need the mean X value. I'm not going to write any of this down though. I'm going to need N. I need the mean Y value. And I need the sum of the XY values. Now, once I've done this, in the recesses of the calculator's memory, all those values are stored. We don't need to write any of that down, okay? So this isn't necessary either, but I am going to clear the window, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to type into the calculator the formula that I presented to you earlier for calculating population covariance. The first part of that formula is 1 over n. Okay, so how can we do that? Well, I suggest that you put the 1 over n part in parentheses. Probably not entirely necessary, but to type in 1 over n, I'm going to just do 1 divided by. Now I want the calculator to input my n value. Even though I know it's 10, I just want to get you used to using the calculator inputting variables for you so that it eliminates some mistakes. So hit the VARS button. Now, you'll have to do some exploring around on the TI-84 because the VARS menu on the TI-84 looks quite different than this, okay? So what I'm going to do right now is I need N. It's under on the CALC 84, it's under the XY menu. So I'm going to hit N, close my parentheses, and I need to multiply that by, and again, this is back in that formula that I presented to you earlier, the sum of the XY values. So hit the VARS button. Now, should seem intuitively that it would be under the summation menu, and it is. Now, again, on the TI-84, it'll be different. So I'm going to choose the sum of the XY values, which is number 5, minus the product of the means of X and Y. So I'm going to put that in parentheses. Again, probably not necessary. I'm sure it would follow the correct order of operations. But mean X and then mean Y. Close parentheses. Enter. So we get 25.55 for our covariance. Now, if you're not interested in how you would take that then to find the correlation R, then you can stop here. But I'm going to go ahead and calculate the correlation also, which is done simply by taking the covariance and dividing it by the product of the standard deviations. So I want to input in my answer. So you can do that by hitting second negative sign, or maybe just hitting enter might input that also. I'm not sure. Divided by parentheses the product of the standard deviations. Now I'm doing population standard deviations. The symbol for population standard deviation is sigma, the little O looking thing, lowercase sigma. So that's under the VARS button. It's calculated that, it's in there. VARS, sigma X, sigma Y, close parentheses, and this will give us our correlation. So this tells me that the correlation between X and Y to 3 decimal places is 0.966. And so that's not surprising to me that's so high. I made this data simply by taking each one of my X values and multiplying it by approximately 3. So in other words, there was a linear relationship between x and y where y is approximately equal to 3x. In fact, if I want to look at the data, I could do a stat plot on it. Let me show you how to do that. Second y equals. Now what I want is a scatter plot, and that's my scatter plot tool. So I have that, and I'm just thinking, I know one thing I probably should check before I do this, make sure there's no equations in there that can make things look a little funky. So it looks like I'm good. And so now if I hit graph, and then I resize my window, get it to where I can actually, okay, so right now what's going on is I should have done, I'm going the wrong way with it. This is what happens when you decide to do something on this for the moment. Well, let me do this. Here's a fun little thing, zoom stat. There we go. Okay, so now I can see that nice linear relationship. In fact, very easily, I can even overlay my best fit line, which is a least squares regression line. So that line, here, let me make it where you can see it better. So if you don't want all these zoom menu options, you can just hit the zoom button again. And so you can see, if you look at the points there, that the y value is somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 times the x value. So that gives you just a little bit better understanding of what's going on. In the upper left-hand corner, you can see the calculated slope and calculated y-intercept. So they calculated this best fit line, this least squares regression line, to be y is approximately equal to negative 1/3 plus 3.09697 times the x value. Okay, so hopefully with all of that, that gives you a little bit better understanding of what's going on with population covariance and what the relationship is between all these different statistics and what's going on with your data. Thank you.